Hey, what's going on, guys? So last week I made a video that I am kind of like doing a three-parter on because I'm working my way up to the third video, which is going to be a big question for you guys. But basically, I've been talking about like early experiences in video games. Last week I talked about what was the first game you ever played. Not specifically what's the first game you ever owned, because that's going to be this week's. And the reason behind that was sometimes the first game you ever played wasn't really yours, but more than likely, the first game you ever owned was either bought by you or for you specifically, so it might be different. So without further ado, I want to ask you guys the question, what is the first game you ever owned? Now, if you watched last week's video, you know, for me, the first game I ever played was Super Mario Bros. 3, and I shared a really cool story about it. But now we're talking about the first game that was gotten for you, like a game that was made, you know, available for you because it's something either you asked for or someone thought that this would be up your alley. And for me, that was Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo was actually my first console. In fact, the first... it was all one thing. I believe it was Christmas, and it was the Super Nintendo bundle that had Donkey Kong Country, and it had Tetris and Dr. Mario, and Donkey Kong Country was the game that I immediately gravitated towards. And my gosh, I could probably tell a million bajillion stories about this game. And so I'm going to probably just condense it down to a couple, but, you know, this was a game that, you know, to me blew everything before it out of the water. At this point, I had played a couple more games, you know, rather than just Super Mario Bros. 3, but I hadn't really played too much. I don't think I'd played Super Mario World yet at the time, but I definitely played other platformers. I'd played the original Mario, Mario 2. I'd also played, definitely had played some of the Mega Man games. But then when I saw Donkey Kong Country and I popped it in, and first off, you're excited because it's like your game. This is meant for you. So that was a huge thing. But I'll say the pre-rendered graphics, you know, at the time, I don't know what that is or what that means. That's not even a buzzword I'm used to. But, you know, you just know instantly, wow, this looks different. This looks amazing. And oh my gosh, it was really cool because, you know, I shared last week my story with Mario 3, where I was told about the flutes and the secrets and what have you. In Donkey Kong Country, I got to experience finding the secrets and finding the hidden stuff for the first time on my own. No one was there to tell me about it. And there was some kind of cool stuff. I mean, immediately, you know, in the first level, there's secret tunnels that you can break into with Rambi the Rhino that gives you bonus stuff, free lives and stuff. As you go through the game, there's all kinds of shortcuts and bonus levels and all sorts of stuff. You know, a couple things that really stood out to me with this game were how the bosses were actually, you know, just blown up versions of the actual enemies in the game. But, you know, it felt different because it wasn't just, you know, jump on the beaver and he dies, right? It's like you jump on him, he gets really angry and jumps, kind of becomes where you can't hit him for a while and jumps really far and really crazy. So it was a big change from what I was used to. Because, I mean, you go back to, you know, Mario 3, and, you know, the bosses are all pretty typical. You know, they're all different looking, but for the most part, it's jump on them 3 times, they shoot some kind of shape at you, and then you pick up the rod. You know, and this game is a little bit different, and each one had their own kind of thing. Granted, I will say that in Donkey Kong Country 1 specifically, you know, they did reuse 2 of the bosses, you know, so you take that what you will, but still, on the whole, it was drastically different than anything I'd ever played before. Finding the secrets was awesome. The underwater levels had excellent music. In fact, all of the music is just fantastic. I can't even, you know, that's there's a reason why the soundtrack is one of the best soundtracks. You know, Donkey Kong Country 1, Donkey Kong Country 2, pretty much anything Rare seems to make. There's always a great soundtrack involved. But one story I did want to talk about was one, I think I've actually talked about this on the channel before, maybe, if so, it was a long time ago, and most of y'all probably haven't seen it, but in Donkey Kong Country 1, in the second world, there's a minecart level that is just incredibly hard. And now, knowing what I know now, being an adult and have played the game a lot more, a lot longer, I now know that you can actually bypass the entire level by just jumping over the barrel that starts the level, and then there's like a secret barrel that takes you pretty much right to the end. But beyond that, this level was a gauntlet. If you've played this game, you probably know what I'm talking about, especially if you played this game as a little kid, because, you know, you probably have worse reaction time, so it's probably a lot harder for you like it was for me. But I remember specifically not being able to beat this level because it was so damn hard. Just trying my best to make the jumps, to avoid the enemies, to not fall in the pitfalls, not hit the fallen mine carts, and I just couldn't do it. And that was like kind of the end of where I was playing this game. I couldn't get any further than that. There's a save point nearby, so I was at least that far, but it drove me crazy. And I had to have been like in the first grade or something at this point because I got like chicken pox, like all little kids get chicken pox. So I was like home, stay at home, sitting in an inflatable Mighty Morphin Power Rangers chair. I remember this very specifically, obviously, by the level of detail I'm going into, but I was in an inflatable Power Rangers chair because in the 90s, all furniture for kids was inflatable. And it was a white Power Rangers chair. And I was covered in, some kind of cream to get me to stop itching. And I remember sitting there playing that level, and I beat it. And like, I will never forget the feeling of accomplishment of beating that level for the first time and getting to continue on and finding out that the second world isn't just a mine world. It's like a, kind of like Roman Colosseum, ancient Greece type situation near the end of that world. And it's just really cool because I just, I did not think I was ever going to beat that level. And in doing so, like I said, it really gave me a huge sense of accomplishment. Really made me feel very good that I did and could beat it. And then plus it opened up, eventually the second boss fight, and then going into what ended up being probably my favorite world of the game, and that is, I don't know the names of the world specifically off the top of my head, but specific level, it was Treetop Town, which was like one of the first or second levels of that third world, and man, I loved the music. I loved that stage. That level was awesome, and I was able to get there that same night that I ended up beating that minecart level. And I don't know why the difficulty of that minecart level was so much higher than everything else, but it definitely was. But hey, that's one of my experiences with my first game that I owned, a game that was meant for me, wasn't a cousin's, wasn't a relative or siblings. This was purchased for me and me alone. There's a reason why it's one of my favorite games too. I got lucky, right? Not everyone's first game that's theirs is such a home run as Donkey Kong Country, so I did definitely get lucky in having a very good first game that was mine. But what's your experience? I'd love to know down below what you guys had for your first game. Once again, I really want to differentiate this from last week's video where we talked about the first game you ever played. This is the first game that was gotten by you or for you specifically, and maybe a cool story behind it. But, once again, hey, that's going to do it for us today, guys. I really look forward to seeing what you guys have to say in the comments down below. Hey, like I said, man, that's going to do it for us today. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing. If you haven't, please do. It would be phenomenal. But as always, my friends, take it easy.